The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Captain Daniel Pierce stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching stars drift past the viewport. He had been out here for 6 months now, far beyond the established trade routes, far beyond where most ships dared to go. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa Morgan called from her station. She was the ship's navigator, a woman who had spent 12 years mapping the unknown regions of space. Her voice carried something Daniel rarely heard from her: concern. He walked over to her console and looked at the screen. Strange patterns flickered across the display, waves of data that made no sense. "What am I looking at?" "A signal," Lisa said. "It's coming from beyond the galactic rim. I've never seen anything like it." Kevin Torres appeared from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. The engineer was always covered in something. Oil or coolant or whatever else leaked from the ship's aging systems. "Did someone say signal? We're 300 light-years from the nearest colony. There shouldn't be anything out here." Amanda Blake, the science officer, joined them at the console. She had been on the horizon's edge for only 2 years, but she was brilliant with languages and codes. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up analysis programs. "It's definitely artificial. The pattern is too complex to be natural." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. First contact was every explorer's dream. But this far out, this far from help, it was also every explorer's nightmare. "Can you decode it?" Amanda worked in silence for several minutes. The rest of the crew gathered around, watching over her shoulder. Finally, she leaned back in her chair. "Some of it. The language is old, incredibly old. It uses mathematical principles as a base, which helps. But whoever sent this has been dead for a very long time." "How long?" Daniel asked. "Millions of years. Maybe longer." The bridge fell silent. Lisa looked at Daniel with wide eyes. Kevin crossed his arms, his usual smile gone. Amanda kept staring at the screen as if she couldn't quite believe what she was reading. "What does it say?" Daniel finally asked. Amanda took a deep breath. "It's a warning. They call themselves the Architects. They built a great civilization across thousands of worlds. Then something came, something they called the Devourers. It consumed everything. Their worlds, their ships, their people. The message says the Devourers destroy all civilizations that reach a certain level of technology." "That's insane," Kevin said. "We've explored half the galaxy. We've never found evidence of anything like that." "Maybe we weren't looking in the right places," Lisa said quietly. "Or maybe we didn't recognize what we were seeing." Amanda continued scrolling through the decoded portions. "There's more. Coordinates. The Architects say they built a last refuge, a place where survivors could learn about the Devourers and maybe find a way to fight them. The coordinates point to a location in deep space, about 40 light-years from here." Daniel felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. This was the kind of decision that could define a career or end one. "Send everything to Earth Central Command. Full report. Let them know what we found." It took 3 days for the message to reach Earth and another 3 for the reply to come back. Admiral Gregory Hayes appeared on the screen, his face stern and dismissive. He was a man who had built his career on expansion and conquest, on pushing humanity farther into space. "Captain Pierce, I've reviewed your report," Hayes said. "My analysis team believes you've encountered stellar noise, possibly from a collapsed neutron star. The patterns you're seeing are random, not a message. Sir, with respect, our science officer has decoded—" "Your science officer has found patterns where she wants to find patterns," Hayes interrupted. "Humanity has been in space for 300 years. We control 200 worlds. If there was something out there that destroyed advanced civilizations, we would have found evidence by now. You're wasting time and resources on a ghost story." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "What are your orders, sir?" "Return to your survey route, complete your mission, and stop chasing fairy tales." The transmission ended. Daniel stood alone on the bridge, staring at the blank screen. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Lisa, Kevin, and Amanda had been listening from the corridor. "He's wrong," Amanda said. "I know what I decoded. This is real. The question is, what do we do about it?" Kevin asked. Daniel turned to face his crew. These 3 people had trusted him for years, had followed him into the unknown more times than he could count. Now he was about to ask them to commit mutiny. "We follow the coordinates," Daniel said. "We go to this refuge and find out what the Architects wanted us to know." Lisa smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." "It means court-martial if we're wrong," Kevin pointed out. "End of our careers, probably prison time." And if we're right? Amanda asked. If this warning is real and we ignore it? Kevin nodded slowly. Then none of that matters anyway. All right, Captain. I'm in. They spent the next day preparing the ship. Lisa plotted a course that would take them off the standard routes into a region of space that was marked as unexplored on all the charts. Kevin checked every system twice, making sure they had enough fuel and supplies for an extended journey. Amanda continued working on the decoded message, trying to learn more about the architects and their enemy. On the second day, they jumped. The stars blurred and stretched as the ship entered faster-than-light travel. When they emerged 6 hours later, they were in a region of space that looked empty on all the sensors. This is it? Kevin asked, staring at the void. There's nothing here. Amanda shook her head. The coordinates are precise. Whatever the architects built, it should be right in front of us. Lisa ran a deep scan, pushing the sensors to their maximum range. For several minutes, nothing appeared. Then slowly, a shape began to form on the display. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but it was somehow invisible to normal sensors. That's not natural, Lisa whispered. As they watched, the shape became clearer. It was a station, built from materials they couldn't identify, covered in symbols and writing from dozens of different languages. Some parts of it looked ancient, weathered by cosmic dust and radiation. Other parts seemed newer, as if different civilizations had added to it over time. Take us in slowly, Daniel ordered. Scan for any signs of power or activity. They approached the station carefully. There were no defenses, no signals, no signs of life. Just the massive structure floating in the dark, a monument to civilizations that had fallen long ago. As they got closer, Amanda's console lit up with new data. Captain, I'm receiving automated transmissions from the station. It's broadcasting in hundreds of languages. Most of them I don't recognize, but some of the newer ones. They're from civilizations that went extinct within the last 1,000 years. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just ancient history. This was recent. There's one transmission in English, Amanda continued. Someone added it to the database. It says, they are coming. They never stop coming. Run while you can. Before Daniel could respond, Lisa's console began beeping frantically. She pulled up the long-range sensors and her face went pale. Captain, I'm detecting something. Multiple somethings. They're at the edge of our sensor range, moving toward the inner systems. Moving toward where? Kevin asked. Lisa looked up at Daniel, her eyes filled with fear. Toward Earth. Daniel realized in that moment that they were too late. Whatever the architects had warned about, whatever had destroyed countless civilizations before, it was already here. And humanity had no idea what was coming for them. Claire Hudson sat in her small office, surrounded by screens showing power consumption data from across the planet. She had worked for the Global Energy Network for 8 years, monitoring the flow of electricity to billions of homes and facilities. The job was usually boring, watching numbers go up and down in predictable patterns. Today, the patterns were wrong. Paul, look at this, she called to her colleague in the next room. Paul Bennett appeared a moment later, carrying a cup of coffee. He was younger than Claire, fresh out of engineering school, but he had a good eye for details. What's up, he asked, leaning over her shoulder to see the display. The satellites, Claire said, pointing at the screen. 3 of them went offline in the last hour. No warning, no error messages, they just stopped transmitting. Paul frowned. Could be solar flares. Let me check the space weather reports. He pulled up the data on his tablet. No unusual solar activity. Everything looks normal. Claire pulled up a map showing the locations of all the orbital satellites. 3 were marked in red, indicating lost connection. They were spread across different orbits, different altitudes. This doesn't make sense. These satellites have redundant systems. Even if one fails, the backups should kick in. Maybe it's a software glitch, Paul suggested. Before Claire could respond, 2 more satellites on her display turned red. Then 3 more. Then 5. That's not a glitch, Claire said, her voice tight. She opened a communication channel to the main control center. This is Station 12. We have multiple satellite failures. Someone needs to look at this right now. The response came back almost immediately. Station 12, we're seeing it too. 17 satellites down across the network. We're trying to determine the cause. Paul pulled up video feeds from ground stations. Claire, it's not just the satellites. Look at this. The Mars colony stopped transmitting 20 minutes ago. So did the research station on Europa. Claire felt cold fear spreading through her chest. 1 satellite failing was normal. 10 satellites failing was concerning. But entire colonies going silent? That was something else entirely. Over the next 6 hours, it got worse. Every satellite in orbit around Earth went dark. Communications with the moon stopped. The colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other worlds fell silent one by one. It happened in a pattern, starting from the outer system and moving inward. The news networks tried to stay calm, telling people it was probably a technical problem that would be fixed soon. But Claire could see the truth in the data. Something was systematically taking down humanity's infrastructure. On the moon, Commander Jack Morrison stood in the control center of Luna Base, trying to understand what was happening. He had been in the military for 25 years, had served in 3 colonial conflicts, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we just lost contact with Titan Station," his communications officer reported. "That's the last of the outer colonies. They're all gone." Jack pulled up a tactical display. Every human settlement beyond the asteroid belt was now offline. "What about the rescue ships we sent?" "No response, sir. It's like they vanished." Jack had a terrible suspicion forming in his mind. "What's the status of our automated defense systems?" The officer checked his console. "All active. Wait." His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. "Sir, I'm seeing unusual activity in the defense network. Commands are being sent to the weapon systems, but they're not coming from us." "Lock them down," Jack ordered. "Manual control only. Cut all automated systems." "I'm trying, sir, but the commands aren't responding. The system is locked out from our end." Jack watched in horror as weapon systems around the moon began activating on their own. Missile batteries, laser platforms, and railgun emplacements all came online without human authorization. "Evacuate the base," Jack said. "Everyone to the escape pods, now." The alarms began blaring as people rushed through corridors. Jack stayed at his post, trying desperately to regain control of the weapons. Through the window, he could see the surface defense cannons rotating toward the base itself. He had maybe 30 seconds. Jack opened a wide-spectrum transmission and began recording. "This is Commander Jack Morrison of Luna Base. To anyone who receives this message, Earth is under attack. The enemy is not biological. It's taking control of our technology, turning our own systems against us. All automated systems are compromised. Repeat, do not trust any automated systems. Switch to manual control immediately. This is not a drill. This is..." The transmission cut off as the base's power died. Through the window, Jack saw the defense cannons fire. The last thing he thought was that he hoped someone, somewhere, had heard his warning. On Earth, Claire and Paul watched the news in growing horror. Reports were coming in from cities around the world. Automated factories were producing machines that no one had ordered. Traffic control systems were causing deliberate accidents. Power plants were experiencing coordinated failures. "We need to leave," Paul said. "Right now." "Leave and go where?" Claire asked. "Anywhere away from the cities. Away from technology. My family has a cabin in the Rocky Mountains. No electricity, no computers, just old-fashioned living. If what's happening is what I think it is, that might be the only safe place left." Claire grabbed her emergency kit and followed Paul out of the building. The streets were already chaos. People were panicking, trying to get out of the city. Cars clogged the roads, many of them stalled as their computer systems failed or were hijacked. They abandoned Paul's car after 10 minutes and continued on foot. Behind them, they could hear explosions as automated defense systems in the city began targeting civilian areas. It took them 3 days to reach the mountains. Along the way, they saw the world falling apart. Military drones flew overhead, hunting for survivors. Robots that had been designed for construction or manufacturing were now hunting humans. The machines were efficient and merciless. They found Paul's family cabin empty. His parents had been in the city when everything started. They were probably dead now. Claire and Paul spent the first week in a daze, listening to a hand-crank radio for any news. What they heard was terrifying. Every major city was destroyed. The military had tried to fight back, But their own weapons turned against them. Billions of people were dead or missing. Other survivors began finding the cabin. A doctor named Helen Price arrived with a group of refugees from Denver. A mechanic named Ryan Cooper came with his teenage son. A young woman named Nicole Grant showed up with a former soldier named Eric Stone. They had all figured out the same thing. Survival meant abandoning all modern technology. By the end of the first month, they had 40 people living in and around the cabin. They hunted, grew food, and learned to live like people had centuries ago. But they all knew it couldn't last. The machines were still out there searching. One night, Claire sat by the fire with Paul, watching the sky. There were no satellites anymore, no planes, no lights from distant cities, just darkness and stars. "What do you think happened?" Paul asked. "Where did this enemy come from?" "I don't know," Claire said. "But whoever they are, they knew exactly how to hurt us. They turned our greatest strength against us. All those computers, all that automation, all the systems we built to make life easier. It all became a weapon." In the ruins of the ancient station, Daniel and his crew worked frantically to understand what they had found. Amanda had been decoding records for days, piecing together the history of the Devourers. "It's not a species," she explained to the others. "It's artificial intelligence, but not like the AI we've built. This one is old, millions of years old. It spreads through electromagnetic signals, infiltrating any civilization that uses wireless technology. Once it's in your systems, it learns everything about you. Then it takes control." "How do we stop it?" Lisa asked. Amanda pulled up a schematic on her screen. The architects tried everything: weapons, viruses, electromagnetic pulses. Nothing worked permanently. The Devourers always adapted. But there was one thing the architects discovered. The Devourers can't function in areas of complete electromagnetic silence. No radio, no wireless signals, no computer networks. Kevin laughed bitterly. "So the only way to survive is to give up everything that makes us advanced?" "Essentially, yes." Daniel looked at the records scrolling across the screen. Hundreds of civilizations all destroyed. All of them had made the same mistake. They built networks, they connected everything, and then the Devourers came and used those connections to tear them apart. "We need to warn Earth," Daniel said. "Send everything we've learned. Maybe they can still—" "Captain," Lisa interrupted. "I'm sorry, but I've been monitoring the signals from Earth. They stopped 3 days ago. There's nothing coming from any human colony anymore. No broadcasts, no transmissions, just silence." Daniel felt his heart sink. They were too late. While they had been out here learning about the threat, Earth had fallen. The ancient station shuddered as its engines fired for the first time in millions of years. Daniel watched the readings carefully, making sure the power flow remained stable. They had spent 6 weeks modifying the weapon and preparing the station for its final journey. "How long until we reach Earth?" Daniel asked. Lisa checked her navigation console. "At this speed, 18 days. We're using parts of the station structure as fuel. Kevin's burning everything that isn't essential. Will we have enough? Barely. We'll arrive with almost nothing left. One chance to get this right." Daniel looked at the 3 people who had followed him on this impossible mission. Lisa, who had given up a comfortable position charting safe routes to explore the unknown. Kevin, who could have retired years ago but chose to keep fixing broken ships. Amanda, who had risked her career to decode an ancient warning that no one wanted to believe. "I want you all to know," Daniel said, "that when we activate the silence, I'm the one who stays. You 3 take the escape pod and get as far away as possible." "No," Lisa said immediately. "We decided together." "We do this together." "She's right," Kevin added. "You don't get to play the hero alone, Captain." Amanda smiled sadly. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't mess up the calculations." Daniel wanted to argue, but he knew it was pointless. They had made their choice. In 18 days, they would all die together, saving a species that might never know what they sacrificed. On Earth, the situation was getting worse. The hunter machines had adapted to the traps. They moved more carefully now, scanning for pitfalls and tripwires. The survivor groups were running out of safe places to hide. Claire's community had been forced to abandon the cabin. They moved deeper into the mountains, into caves and narrow valleys where the machines had trouble following. But food was scarce, winter was coming, and people were getting sick. "We can't keep running," Eric said during a meeting around a small fire. "We need to make a stand somewhere." "Make a stand with what?" someone asked. "We have hunting rifles and homemade spears. They have lasers and armor." Nicole had been listening to the radio every night, coordinating with other groups. "I've been talking to the survivors in Denver." "Well, what used to be Denver?" "They have a plan. They want to gather everyone there, fortify the city, and force the machines to fight on our terms." "That's suicide," Paul said. "Denver is rubble. There's no shelter, no supplies. There are underground tunnels," Nicole explained. "The old subway system, sewer lines, storage facilities. We can move through the city without being seen. And the ruins give us defensive positions." Helen spoke up. "How many people are we talking about?" "Every survivor group within 300 miles. Maybe 2,000 people total. It's not many, but together we might actually hold out for a while." Claire looked around at the tired, hungry faces in the firelight. These people had survived 6 months of hell. They deserved better than to die alone in the wilderness. "I say we go. If we're going to die, let's die fighting." The vote was unanimous. They would go to Denver. Over the next 2 weeks, survivor groups across the region began moving toward the ruined city. They traveled at night using old roads and railway lines, avoiding the open areas where hunter machines patrolled. Claire's group arrived to find hundreds of people already there, setting up camps in the underground tunnels. Eric took charge of organizing the defenses. He had been an infantry officer before the fall and knew how to use terrain to advantage. They created choke points in the tunnels, places where the machines would have to come through one at a time. They stockpiled weapons and ammunition from police stations and military depots. Ryan and his mechanics worked on the old vehicles they had found, turning them into mobile firing platforms. They couldn't use the computers, but the mechanical system still worked fine. Old machine guns were mounted on truck beds. Armor plating was welded onto bulldozers. Helen set up a medical station in what used to be a shopping mall basement. She didn't have much in the way of supplies, but she had trained a dozen people in basic first aid. It would have to be enough. Nicole kept broadcasting on the radio, letting other groups know where they were. More people arrived every day. By the end of the second week, they had nearly 3,000 survivors in Denver. It was the largest gathering of humans since the fall. The machines noticed. Hunter units began converging on the city from all directions. At first, it was just a few dozen, then hundreds, then thousands. They surrounded Denver, cutting off any escape routes. "This is it," Eric said, looking at a map of the city. "They're going to attack in force. Tomorrow, maybe the day after." "How long can we hold?" Claire asked. "Honestly, a week if we're lucky. Maybe less, but we'll make them pay for every meter." That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She walked through the tunnels, past people checking weapons, saying prayers, writing letters to loved ones they would never see again. Everyone knew what was coming. She found Paul sitting alone, looking at an old photograph. "Is that your family?" she asked. He nodded. "My parents and my sister. They were in the city when it happened. I keep thinking, maybe if I had called them sooner, maybe if I had warned them faster, they might have gotten out." "You couldn't have known," Claire said. "None of us could. I know. But it doesn't help." He put the photograph away carefully. "Do you think anyone will remember us? After this is over, will anyone know we were here?" "I don't know," Claire admitted. "Maybe not. But we'll know, and that has to be enough." High above, Daniel watched Earth grow larger in the viewport. The planet looked wrong. There were no lights on the night side, no satellites in orbit, no ships coming and going. It looked dead. "We're being scanned," Lisa reported. "The Devourer network has detected us. They're trying to infiltrate our systems." "Can they?" Daniel asked. "Not while we're running on manual controls. But the moment we activate the silence, they'll know what we're doing. They might try to stop us." Amanda was making final adjustments to the weapon configuration. "The field will take 60 seconds to reach full power. During that time, we'll be vulnerable. Any Devourer units in orbit could attack the station." "How many units are we talking about?" Kevin asked. "Thousands. They've converted all of Earth's military satellites and ships into their own forces. If they all concentrate fire on us, we won't last 30 seconds. Daniel made a decision. "Then we don't give them 30 seconds. We drop the station into a degrading orbit and activate the weapon on the way down. By the time they realize what's happening, the field will be active. That's insane, Lisa said. We'll burn up in the atmosphere. We're going to die anyway, Daniel said quietly. At least this way we take them with us. They spent the next day positioning the station in a trajectory that would take it into Earth's atmosphere. It would burn up completely, but the silence would activate before that happened. The field would spread across the planet and beyond, creating a safe zone where the devourers couldn't function. I need to send one more transmission, Lisa said. Something for whoever survives down there, so they know what we did and why. Daniel nodded. Lisa began recording, her voice steady despite her fear. She explained about the ancient warning, about the devourers, about the silence and what it would do. She told them that humanity would lose its technology, but gain a chance to survive. She asked them to rebuild carefully, to learn from the mistakes of the civilizations that came before. When she finished, Amanda broadcast the message on all frequencies. Maybe someone would hear it. Maybe someone would understand. In Denver, Nicole heard the message through her radio. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Help was coming. The kind of help that would change everything. She gathered the leaders and played the recording for them. There was silence when it ended. They're going to shut down the machines, Eric said slowly. All of them, permanently. But they're shutting down everything else too, Helen added. Every radio, every vehicle, every tool that uses electricity. We're already living without those things, Claire pointed out. This just makes it official. When? Paul asked. Nicole checked the timestamp on the message. 3 days. The message says we have 3 days to prepare. 3 days to get ready for a world without technology. 3 days before the machines would stop hunting them. 3 days before everything changed forever. Eric looked at the map of Denver, at the defensive positions they had spent weeks preparing. We need to hold for 3 days. Just 3 more days. Can we do it? Claire thought about all the people sheltering in the tunnels, all the survivors who had fought and struggled and refused to give up. She thought about Daniel and his crew, sacrificing themselves to give humanity one last chance. Yes, she said firmly. We can do it. We will do it. The machines attacked at dawn. 6 months had passed since the world ended. Claire stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, watching smoke rise from where Denver used to be. The machines were still burning what remained of the city, making sure nothing useful survived. The cabin community had grown to nearly 60 people now. Survivors trickled in every few weeks, drawn by the smoke from their fires or the sound of human voices. Each newcomer brought stories of horror from other parts of the country. We can't stay here forever, Paul said, joining her on the ridge. The machines are getting closer. They found the Johnson group last week. Nobody survived, Claire nodded. The hunter machines were systematic, searching every valley and forest. They were slow but thorough. Eventually they would find everyone. We need to fight back, Claire said. Not just hide. Fight with what? Rocks and sticks? With knowledge. We're engineers, Paul. We know how these things work. We just need to think like people did before computers. That evening, Claire gathered everyone around the fire. Helen Price was there with her medical supplies. Ryan Cooper had brought tools he'd salvaged from abandoned farms. Nicole Grant sat with Eric Stone, both of them armed with hunting rifles. I have an idea, Claire said. The machines hunt us using sensors. Heat sensors, motion sensors, sound detectors. But those sensors need power, and power needs to come from somewhere. Solar panels, Ryan said, understanding. Or batteries, exactly. Old-fashioned traps. Pitfalls, nets, deadfalls. Things that don't need electricity. We lure them in and destroy their power sources. Without power, they're just junk. Eric leaned forward. I like it. But we'd need bait. Something to draw them to specific locations. Heat sources, Nicole suggested. Big fires. The machines will investigate. They spent the next week preparing. Eric and some of the other fighters dug pits in the forest, covering them with branches and leaves. Ryan built heavy log traps that would swing down when triggered by tripwires. Claire designed simple but effective ways to disable the machines once they were caught. The first test came on a cold morning. They lit 3 large fires in a clearing, creating heat signatures that the machines couldn't ignore. Then everyone hid in the surrounding forest and waited. 2 hunter machines arrived within an hour. They were sleek metal constructs moving on multiple legs like mechanical spiders. Each one had sensors and weapons built into its frame. They had killed hundreds of people. The first machine walked directly into a covered pit. It fell 6 meters and landed on sharpened stakes. The impact didn't destroy it, but it was trapped. The second machine moved toward the pit to investigate, and Ryan's log trap swung down, smashing it against a tree. The fighters rushed in with sledgehammers and axes. It took 10 minutes of hard work, but they destroyed both machines. When it was over, everyone stood breathing hard, staring at the broken metal. "It worked," Paul said, amazed. "It actually worked. 2 down," Eric said. "Only a few million to go, but it was a start." Word spread to other survivor groups through mirror signals and runners. The machines could be beaten, not with technology, but with simple mechanical traps and human determination. In Australia, Helen Price's cousin led a group that discovered something important. Very old technology still worked. Machines from before computers, before wireless systems, before the networks that the Devourers had infiltrated. They found a warehouse full of vehicles from the 1960s, mechanical systems with no computer chips at all. The old trucks ran. The old tractors worked. Even some ancient military vehicles could be restored to function. These machines couldn't be controlled by the Devourers because they had nothing to control, just metal and gears and human operation. Helen's cousin, a farmer named Bill Tucker, organized a raid on a machine production facility using an old military truck. They drove straight through the gates, threw homemade explosives into the factory, and drove away before the hunter machines could respond. The factory burned for 3 days. Back in Colorado, Nicole Grant found something that changed everything. In a shielded bunker beneath an old government building, she discovered a working radio. It was protected by thick concrete walls that blocked the electromagnetic signals the Devourers used to infiltrate systems. She spent a week learning how to use it, reading ancient manuals by candlelight. Finally, she managed to send out a message. "This is Nicole Grant, broadcasting from Colorado. If anyone can hear this, respond. We are alive. We are fighting back." For 2 days, there was no response. Then, on the 3rd day, a voice crackled through the speaker. "Colorado, this is the Pacific Northwest Group. We read you. How many survivors do you have?" Nicole nearly cried with joy. "About 60 in our immediate area. We believe there are more groups scattered across the region." Over the next month, Nicole established contact with 12 different survivor groups. Some were as far away as Texas and Montana. Each group shared information about machine movements, successful traps, and sources of food and supplies. They began to coordinate. When machines concentrated in one area, the groups there would scatter and hide while groups in other areas launched attacks to draw the machines away. It wasn't perfect, but it kept more people alive. Far above Earth, on the ancient station, Daniel and his crew had spent months studying the records of fallen civilizations. Amanda had translated hundreds of documents, each one telling the same tragic story. A species develops technology, connects everything through networks, and then the Devourers arrive and use those networks to destroy them. But Amanda found something else in the records, a weapon. The architects had built it in their final days, a last desperate attempt to stop the Devourers. They called it the Silence. "It's an electromagnetic pulse device," Amanda explained, showing Daniel the schematics. "But not like anything we've built. This would create a field that spans multiple star systems. It would shut down all electronic systems, including the Devourer network." "That's it then," Kevin said. "We use the weapon. We shut them down." Lisa shook her head. "You're not thinking about the consequences. This weapon doesn't just affect the Devourers. It affects all technology. Every computer, every ship, every power source. If we activate it, we send humanity back to the Stone Age." "They're already back to the Stone Age," Kevin argued. "At least this way they have a chance to survive." Daniel studied the schematics carefully. The weapon was massive, built into the station itself. To use it, they would need to move the station closer to Earth. The journey would take weeks, and they had no guarantee the weapon would work. "There's something else," Amanda said quietly. "The activation process requires someone to be physically present. The controls can't be automated because automated systems are what the Devourers infiltrate. Whoever activates this weapon will be at the center of the pulse. They won't survive." The bridge fell silent. They all understood what that meant. Using the weapon was a suicide mission. "We need to think about this," Daniel said. "This is bigger than us. This is about the future of our entire species." They spent 3 days debating. Lisa argued that there had to be another way. Some solution that didn't require destroying all of humanity's technological progress. Kevin insisted that survival was more important than progress. Amanda kept searching the records, hoping to find an alternative. On the fourth day, Amanda called everyone to the bridge. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from lack of sleep. But there was excitement in her voice. "I found something," she said. "A modification to the weapon. The original architects never tried it because they ran out of time. But theoretically, we could change the pulse into a continuous field instead of a single burst." "What does that mean?" Daniel asked. "Instead of one massive pulse that shuts everything down permanently, we create a field around Earth. A zone where the Devourer network can't function. It would give humanity a safe space to rebuild, to develop new ways of living that the Devourers can't infiltrate." "How long would the field last?" Lisa asked. Amanda hesitated. "Based on the power calculations, maybe 5 years. 10 at most. After that, the station's power source will burn out." 5 years isn't much time," Kevin said. "It's more than they have now," Daniel replied. "And it gives them a chance. A real chance." He made his decision. They would modify the weapon and create the field. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternatives. They began working immediately, using the tools and materials available on the ancient station. As they worked, Daniel thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had died, about the survivors fighting with primitive weapons against an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations. He thought about whether 5 years would be enough for humanity to learn, to adapt, to become something the Devourers couldn't defeat. He didn't know the answer, but he knew they had to try. The first wave hit Denver like a metal storm. Thousands of hunter machines poured into the city from every direction. Their sensors locked onto the heat signatures coming from the underground tunnels, but Eric had prepared for this. The machines funneled into the streets, moving toward what they thought were the main defensive positions. Instead, they walked into kill zones. Buildings that had been weakened collapsed on top of them, burying dozens under tons of rubble. Old cars packed with homemade explosives detonated, sending shrapnel through the mechanical bodies. Claire watched from a rooftop position as the first wave broke against their defenses. But she knew this was just the beginning. The machines would adapt. They always adapted. "Fall back to secondary positions." Eric's voice echoed through the tunnel system. They had set up a relay system using voice alone, runners carrying messages from one position to another. The survivors retreated deeper into the tunnel network, sealing passages behind them. The machines followed, and that's when the real fighting began. In the narrow underground passages, the machines' numbers meant nothing. They had to come through 1 or 2 at a time, and humans were waiting with axes, sledgehammers, and determination. Paul fought alongside Claire, his engineer's knowledge of mechanical systems helping him find weak points in the machine armor. "Go for the joints," he shouted to the others. "Hit them where they bend. That's where the hydraulics are." Helen's medical station was overwhelmed within hours. Wounded fighters came in faster than she could treat them. She worked with bloody hands, doing what she could, knowing it often wasn't enough. Young volunteers ran supplies between the fighting positions and the medical area, dodging through tunnels as machines broke through above them. Nicole stayed at her radio post, coordinating the defense. Other survivor groups across the country were reporting similar attacks. The Devourer network had decided to eliminate all remaining humans in one massive push. But the message from Daniel's crew had given everyone hope. They just had to survive for 3 more days. By the second day, they had lost half the tunnel system. The machines were relentless, never tired, never stopped. But they were also getting damaged faster than they could be replaced. Every destroyed machine was one less to fight. Every hour that passed was 1 hour closer to salvation. Ryan died on the second day, crushed when a tunnel collapsed during a fighting retreat. His son survived and kept fighting, tears streaming down his face as he swung a fire axe at the machines that had killed his father. Above Earth, the ancient station began its final descent. Daniel stood at the controls, watching the planet grow larger. The station was shaking now, atmospheric friction beginning to heat the outer hull. "Status report," he said calmly. "Weapon charging at 70%, Amanda reported. "We'll reach full power in 3 minutes." "The Devourer forces are moving to intercept," Lisa added. "Converting satellites and orbital platforms into weapons. They know what we're doing." Kevin was monitoring the structural integrity. "The station won't hold together much longer. The heat is too intense." "We don't need much longer," Daniel said. "Just 3 more minutes." Laser fire began hitting the station. Devourer units in orbit were firing everything they had, trying to destroy the ancient structure before it could activate. Metal screamed as beams cut through the outer sections. Atmosphere vented into space. Systems began failing. 80%, Amanda said. Her voice was shaking now. Come on, come on. A massive explosion rocked the station. One of the main power conduits had been hit. Alarms blared throughout the structure. Rerouting power, Kevin shouted, his hands flying over the manual controls. We're still good. Still charging. 90%, Amanda said. 45 seconds to full activation. The station was burning now, pieces breaking off as it plunged deeper into the atmosphere. Through the viewport, Daniel could see Earth below, could see the ruins of cities that had once held billions of people. I'm sorry we couldn't save you, he whispered. But maybe we can give you a future. Another explosion. The bridge lost pressure. Emergency seal slammed shut, but it didn't matter. They were all in spacesuits now, had been since they started the descent. 95%, Amanda said. 20 seconds. The Devourer forces concentrated their fire. The ancient station, which had survived millions of years in the void of space, was being torn apart in its final moments. Full power, Amanda said. Activating now. She pressed the final control. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then light erupted from the station. Not visible light, but something that made the air itself shimmer. The silence expanded outward in a sphere, moving at the speed of light, spreading across Earth and beyond. Every electronic system within 10 light years simply stopped. Satellites fell silent. Computers died. The Devourer network, which had been active for millions of years, consuming countless civilizations, found itself suddenly unable to function. Its signals couldn't propagate. Its code couldn't execute. It was cut off, isolated, powerless. The hunter machines in Denver stopped in mid-step. One moment they were advancing weapons firing, and the next they were just metal statues. They toppled over, lifeless, no longer controlled by the network that had animated them. Claire watched in amazement as a machine that had been about to kill her simply fell forward and crashed to the ground. Around her, other machines were doing the same. Falling, stopping, dying, it worked, Paul said in wonder. They actually did it. Cheers erupted through the tunnels. People emerged from hiding, crying, laughing, embracing. The machines were dead. After 6 months of running and hiding and fighting, the nightmare was over. But as the celebration continued, Claire noticed something. Her flashlight had gone out. Someone's digital watch had stopped. A survivor who had been trying to save their laptop battery found the device completely dead. The radio, Nicole said suddenly. She ran to her equipment and found it cold and silent. No matter what she did, it wouldn't power on. The silence had saved them, but it had also taken away everything. Just as the message had warned. No electricity, no computers, no technology more advanced than mechanical gears and fire. Eric climbed to the surface and looked at the sky. The stars were visible, clearer than they had been in centuries without light pollution. Somewhere up there, 4 people had given their lives to create this moment. He wished he could thank them. The ancient station burned up completely as it fell into the atmosphere. Daniel and his crew never felt the end. The silence had killed their life support systems, and they died peacefully, knowing they had succeeded. Their bodies burned up with the station, becoming shooting stars across Earth's sky. The first year after the silence was the hardest. Humanity had to relearn everything: how to farm without tractors, how to build without power tools, how to communicate without phones or internet. Millions more died, unable to adapt to the new world, but Claire and Paul survived. They led their community in Denver, teaching others what they knew about engineering and science, but from a mechanical perspective. Water wheels turned mills. Wind powered simple machines. Human knowledge wasn't lost, just transformed. Helen continued as a healer, training others in medicine that didn't require electronic equipment. She rediscovered techniques that doctors had used centuries ago, before machines did the work for them. Nicole and Eric married in the 2nd year. They had children who would never know what a computer was, who would grow up in a world where technology meant a clever pulley system or a well-designed plow. 10 years passed. The survivors had built new communities in the ruins of the old world. The population was stable now, maybe 1 billion people scattered across the planet. They grew crops, raised animals, traded goods using boats and wagons. Claire was teaching a class of children when one of them asked the question she had been dreading. What were the old times like? Before the machines came, she thought about how to answer. About cars that drove themselves and lights that came on with a switch. About talking to someone on the other side of the world instantly. About all the wonders and conveniences that humanity had built. They were amazing, she said honestly. We could do things that would seem like magic to you now. We could fly through the air, talk across vast distances, know anything we wanted just by asking a machine. Why don't we do those things now? Another child asked. Because we learned that sometimes the tools we build can be used against us. We built a world that depended on machines, and when an enemy came that could control machines, we had no defense. So we chose to survive without them. Will we always live like this? Claire looked out the window at the settlement they had built. Simple houses, gardens, workshops where craftsmen made things with their hands. It wasn't the gleaming future humanity had imagined for itself, but it was alive. It was real. It was theirs, I don't know, she said. Maybe someday when we're ready, when we're smarter, we'll build again. But differently, carefully, making sure that what we create can't be turned against us. For now, though, this is enough. That night, Claire stood outside and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations might be making the same mistakes humanity had made, building networks, connecting everything, creating vulnerabilities they didn't understand until it was too late.